What's going on, everybody, and welcome back once again. My name is Jordan, also known as JMonster, and I am one of the lead developers behind Silmarillion and Total War. Today I have another 2v2 for you. This is going to be on a brand new map that will be included in our new patch. I believe it is called TALATH RHUNEN, and it's a map that I made myself, so I hope you guys enjoy it. A little bit of a brief overview. The center here is dominated by this center plateau. There are 2 levels to it, including this little hilltop up here. There are also several crossings that you can use to go through these ruins on either side, and then of course you have the crossings, very large and wide crossings that are adjacent to the plateau. So, pretty interesting map, lots of places to fight over things, lots of places for hiding. Got some long grass here and a number of forested areas where you can launch surprise attacks, but each side of these rivers are going to be dominated by small little hills so that each team has a fairly strong point from which they can launch missile attacks and try and dominate the crossings and push across with their infantry. Another very large crossing over here. Yeah, that's basically the long and short of the army. It's very hilly. Once you get into the ground, it's not super even, and that's kind of by design, just to make it a little bit more interesting and to inject a little bit of randomness into your game. Over here, we're going to find the Easterling army being commanded by myself. Before I get into it, I would like to mention this replay is not the closest. It's still pretty close and like a really fun, entertaining game for a few reasons that, of course, you will see as you move into it. But if you're looking for something as close as our last game, where there was a 1% difference with 22 models left on one side, this is not going to be the game for you. So, you have been warned. Feel free to tune out, or if you're interested, stick around. You're going to see some really cool stuff. The Easterlings here from the previous patch have changed, I think, quite mightily. The Pillagers of Himring have been made a little bit better, and they of course benefited from the axe thrower buffs that I talked about in the last match. So they've got really good charge values, so you can use them as sort of makeshift lancers in a similar fashion to the Mardrod of Malduin for the Haladin. And I'm sure if you've seen our last video, you are going to be intimately familiar with such a unit. I've also brought some Salamandrine Guard. They are going to have an armor upgrade, though we do not currently have a visual upgrade for them. They are armor piercing with their special weapon types, and they have some serious bonuses against elephants, which also applies, it is worth noting, to chariots and to certain spider units. But yeah, so Salamandrine Guard, always nice to have them. I've also got some Croatoani Nomads here for a little bit of extra support at range, and I've got a second company of the Salamandrine Guard, more Croatoani Nomads, 2 more units of them, in fact, and then I've got another company here of the Pillagers of Himring. So I think in total, I've got about 7 units of Cavalry, and that is going to be a lot of my utility and a good amount of killing power. The rest of my army is going to consist of, I think, 2 to 3 units of the Warband of Lothland. I believe I've got 3 units of Clan Guard here. I've also got 2 of the Wardens of Lothland, who are useful for not only being spear units, but they are also an Inspire unit. I've got, I believe, 2 units of the Croatoani Marauders, 3 units of Halberdiers of Lothland with attack upgrades. I've also brought the Legendary Company for the Easterlings. Those are the Fangs of the Faithless. It's the only foot archer unit for the Easterlings who otherwise lack them entirely and rely exclusively on mounted skirmishers. They've got poison arrows, they've got shields, they've got good armor, but they don't benefit from a lot of the Falk's bonuses, and they don't have fear, at least not when they're in melee, unlike the Despoilers of Dor Caranthir, which they are more ranged, focused brother, counterpart, if you will. And I believe I mentioned that they don't have the Falk's charge bonus, nor do they have the bonus versus cavalry that Falk's will confer upon most Easterling units who have them. Another unit there of the Wardens of Lothland, and that's basically it for my army. A decent enough infantry force, none of the big sort of bodyguard units like the Chieftain's Vanguard or the Sons of Ulfang. Really more of like a mid-tier focused army, but potentially very scary against the right opponents. Moving on over here, we have the Philothrim under Alexander 10Q. Certainly you'll recognize him from our last battle. He's brought 2 units of the Scouts of Eglarest. Worth noting that high-end melee cavalry like this have been given an extra point of damage against horsemen. So they're going to distinguish themselves just a little bit better from some of the more mid-tier focused counterparts, and they will be able to go toe-to-toe with them just that much more efficiently. He's also brought, I think, 2 to 3 units of the Marines of Brithambar. These are light harassment javelins, but unlike other harassment javelin units, these are actually an infantry template. Just one of the ways of specializing the elves of the Valas. Have some Aran Kirlim here as well, heavy Noldor units that are a bodyguard classed unit, but they also have just a single point of HP, so that's worth noting. Got some Warriors of Eglarest here on the front lines. They do have an armor upgrade, and I think they now have some visual things that will reflect that. So you can see that they're a little bit chunkier, a little bit heavier here, and that comes to us thanks to Steward of Dale. You can sort of see the difference between the two. They've got those heavier shoulder pads that kind of indicate that you've upgraded their armor. I believe Alexander has 2 to 3 units of the Marines of Eglarest. These are Hunter Javelins, so high damage, low range, slower in-flight speed, and of course they don't have a ton of ammunition. More Warriors of Eglarest over here. Got some Marksmen of Balar who now have an armor upgrade as well, so you will see a visual difference when you upgrade them. 2 units of them. They are not bad at all. Another unit here of the Aran Kirlim, some more Marines of Brithambar, and I think we've got some Aran Efadun here as well, and there's going to be a couple of units of hidden Foresters of Nimbrethil. One thing to note about the Haladin that is new in the not the Haladin, sorry, the Philothrim. Sorry, I'm recording this directly after our recording the Haladin game, so I may make that mistake a few times. The Philothrim have got a new trait to their faction bonuses that gives all of their spear units additional charge damage. So now you have a bit of a choice. You can benefit, depending on the unit and the situation, from the spear reflection, the spear charge reflection that the spear unit's traits will afford them, versus a little bit more offensive punch. So if you've pinned a unit in place already, then maybe you want to use the charge, but if you are suffering a charge yourself, then maybe you want to use the more defensive capabilities that are built into spearmen. So some choices there for sure. Bunch of spearmen of Brithambar detachments here as well. It looks like maybe 2 or so units of them, and they have benefited from those aforementioned changes as well. A couple units of the Forces of Nimbrethil, which are 2-handed spearmen. They got a big bonus to their charge, so now they are much more effective as ambush units, and of course they're extremely nasty against cavalry. We saw what just a small number of 2-handed spearmen in the form of the Outlaws of Hithlum were able to do in the last game. You can definitely expect great things from them if they manage to get into cavalry. That being said, let's go ahead and see what our opponents are bringing to the battle today. We are going to be facing off against Mithrim, and I believe the Haladin as well. So I will see you guys in just a few moments. So this game is extremely fast-paced, so I'm actually just going to pause it here so we don't miss anything. The army directly across from me is going to be the Haladin, commanded by Tundra's Fox. He's got a whole bunch of the Huskarlar here, at least 2 of them. He's got a bunch of Swear-to-Brother mixed in with Ulfadin, which is super scary. This is just one big blob of relentless infantry, which, if they were able to be spread out, would just be an absolute nightmare for me to try and fight. We've got Darawarda here. One of them is going to have their armor upgrade. You can see the general's going to be hanging out in there. And the second one is going to be just plain old Darawarda without their armor upgrade. In the back here, we've got dismounted Mardrot. I think we've got at least 1 unit, maybe 2. We've got some Fryswear hanging out in the back as well. They are light hybrid spear bowmen. They have really strong melee defense. Well, not super strong, but still quite good for a low tier. They definitely can punch a little bit above their weight class. And they've got some bows for a little bit of extra utility. That being said, the ammunition is very limited. And not pictured here, you're going to see a couple of units of Waltrider Dragoons, if I'm not mistaken. And I believe that there are some chariots around, which are a deadly anti-cavalry deterrent. Over here, we have the Elves of Mithrim being played by Mevin. He's got a couple of Hunters of Mithrim. He's got Human Guildsmen, I believe, to the tune of 3 units of. Got Outlaws, more Human Guildsmen. That's going to be the 3rd unit there. A whole bunch of the Sword Bearers of Mithrim. And then a unit that was absent from the prior battle. Those are going to be the Sentries of Mithrim. At least 2 units of them going to be out front here in order to deter any cavalry charges. I think it's also worth noting that he's got at least 3 units of the Shore Riders of Mithrim. He doesn't have the Legendary Company, so you have to see them a little bit later. But he's also got Bane of the Incomers, and I think he's got some hidden archers here as well. I could be mistaken. So, without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the battle. Hope you guys enjoy. We're going to kick off this battle with a bang as the Mithrim Catapult takes aim at my poor halberdiers. And this time, unlike the previous game, they are going to hit home immediately, and that's going to scythe its way through a lot of my valuable infantry. The Easterlings' infantry is super strong, not very high in number. At least the Boar units are not super high in number. They are, of course, divided between two small sub-factions, the tribe of Boar and the tribe of Wolfang, and my Boar units cannot take that kind of volley for very long. More of them going to get caught up in that blast. And I'm going to be forced onto the defensive, at least for a little bit. Now, I've split up my army in a few different places trying to defend multiple points along the ford. I've got another bit of halberdiers and spearmen and stuff like that over here. And I'm sending my cavalry cross en masse. Now, I know what it's like to play against the Haladin, so I'm very much wary of the fact that there could be some hidden cavalry over here. So I'm going to be very, very careful with how I choose to advance here, and I've already managed to suss out a couple of the Waldschreider Dragoons, and I don't want these little horse archers here, the Rotani Nomads, to be isolated against them, because those melee cavalry can be incredibly aggressive and just bully my poor Rotani, and I don't want that to happen, especially while they're dealing significant damage to them from range. Their ammunition may be limited, but so are the defenses of these missile cav. And so, I'm going to send another unit there of my Rotani across. I'm going to come across in force here with my pillagers so that I can bully these Waldschreiders straight back, because they're not going to have it all their own way here with the Salamandrine Guard and the pillagers of Himring in close attendance. Up here, the Haladin going for their famous and very scary Haladin Rush, and I don't want him to be able to command all of this all by himself, so I'm going to move forward with my army as well. Fangs of the Faithless being backed up here by a couple units of the Rotani Marauders. I'm also moving my other Phalanx group up here to rejoin the rest of the army, so we'll have 3 halberds and supporting infantry in total. Meanwhile, the catapult here from Mevin is sort of moving off, and they don't have the best firing solution, at least against certain parts of my army. Up here on the hill, it looks like Sentries of Mithrim pushing hard against some of the forces of Nimbrethil, which isn't going super well for the Foresters. Meanwhile, over here, though, Foresters with Marine support have managed to beat back the first wave of the Grey Elves of Mithrim. But the way that Mevin likes to play is very reliant on mid-tiers, which gives him a lot of numbers and a lot of options. Many of the Sword Bearers, however, have taken some pretty gross attrition to the Harassment Javelins of the Haladin. It's going to cut that formidable shield value in half, and then after that, they've really only got their armor value left over, which I believe is only about 4, so that gets cut in half as well. So Harassment Javelins can be very good at separating wheat from chaff. Sentries of Mithrim lining up, because who knows what they're going to need. It looks like the Huskarlar here have come up in support of their ally, and Alexander is in pretty serious danger of losing this hill. That being said, he's very wisely brought up some more reinforcements. He's actually peppering the Haladin, getting ready to push them a little bit farther forward. But all the fun stuff is happening over here. So, Pillagers of Himring taking it on the chin there from the Waldschreiders. We managed to suss out the hiding place of the Waldschreider Wain Riders, but this cavalry force here, potentially very, very scary. So my plan is to try and bully these guys out of position, get them to turn their backs to my horse archers, which we've managed to do quite admirably, because if they sit around and suffer the wrath of my pillagers, then things are going to hurt them as well. So this is really a superior cavalry force being driven back by numbers and skirmish fire, and yeah, that's kind of the long and short of it. These Waldschreiders could absolutely devastate most of my cavalry unless they're all supporting each other. And of course the Waldschreiders, any blobs that form, they're going to be able to punish that heavily with those chariots, and that's not something that I want to have happen. A little bit of an oopsie here, so we're shooting at some of the sword bearers of Mithrim. I think, indeed, they have been brought out of hiding. So we've got 3 units of shore riders on their way, which leaves me vastly outclassed here in terms of the cavalry. And yeah, definitely don't want to fight both of them at once, so we're going to try and be as aggressive as possible here. and force those Walsh Riders out of hiding, so that we can both deal damage to them and try and pressure the back of their armies here that are up on the plateau. Meanwhile, frontal engagement here, not going super well for the Haladin, as they are being peppered by my ally up on the hill and having to march into a death wall. I've got some Hurotani Marauders here who are well positioned to make these Ulfodin here pay, but unfortunately they're going for a much larger, much more far away target, and that's going to be over here. They're going to overshoot a lot of that, but I do have my Fangs of the Faithless peppering down some of the Dour Warder and some of their supporting units in the back. Dour Warder dislodging a volley of javelins towards my Halberdier lineup, and we are beating their infantry fairly soundly in a few places, but it's really going back and forth here. Javelins flying in from both sides. Not fun. Very aggressive plays over here as we try to take on the Walsh Riders. I'm going to use a unit of my Salamandrian Guard, get them in there with some support from the Pillagers. The Pillagers are going to get absolutely smashed here, but the point is to try and force a blob. I've still got another unit of Salamandrian Guard in the back there, and I've got all of my my Horse Archers here in that Cantabrian circle, dealing quite a lot of damage, actually, to the Hunters of Mithrim, dealing death from afar, but what I probably should be shooting is over here. We did manage to deal some pretty good damage, I think. I think both of my Pillagers of Himring were in there, slugging it out, going toe-to-toe, and one unit is going to be left behind as my Salamandrian Guard try to get out of there, and they managed to get out just in the nick of time before that unit is broken. That would have been disastrous. Like, this would have turned around so quickly. Shore Riders of Mithrim now moving in support of their allies managed to also extricate my other unit of the Pillagers. You can see the Walsh Riders here bearing down on them. I'm going to sack these guys and then focus fire a little bit with my Horse Archers. I can see Shore Riders of Mithrim here trying to go for a cheeky charge against my poor Pillagers, and they are actually going to break there, especially with the addition of those Haladin chariots. Over here we managed to isolate a unit of the Shore Riders of Mithrim, and we're going to do a lot of damage to them, focus firing them with missiles, while simultaneously shooting into the blobs of cavalry that are forming over here. 21 to 25, we are still a little bit ahead. Another deadly volley of arrows coming in from the rear, cutting through this lighter and medium cavalry, and now I'm going to retreat and kite a little bit. I've also brought over a unit of Warband of Lothland to give me just that extra little bit of edge, and to replace some of my losses in the form of my 2 units of Pillagers. Looks like there's some Bane of the Incomers here that have shown themselves. Probably a little bit of a micro mistake here on the part of Mevin, getting these guys as close to my infantry and other such things as they currently are. Wayne Rider Chariots shooting in to my Warband. They're going to be able to take that on the chin quite handily. And the Shore Riders of Mithrim looking pretty good. One unit did take a significant amount of damage, whereas the Walsh Riders, I think, were almost cut down. There's a decent amount of the Walsh Riders kind of laying dead at various points here. But I can see these Shore Riders, and I've got my support units in position, and I've got my infantry in behind them. So I'm willing to take this sort of frontal engagement here with a much more dangerous and numerically superior foe. And my Salamanders are going to get in there, and they're going to be supported by a lot of those arrows. Some of them will hit my Salamanders, but they've got the armor to be able to do just fine. You can see me circling around here with my Hurotani Nomads, using all 3 of them in tandem. And now as they retreat, we're going to have an excellent opportunity. Almost a full encirclement, which would have spelled the doom for this entire army. I think we would have been able to rout them off there. But yeah, Salamandrian Guard are going to give chase, as are my Hurotani Nomads, while these Shore Riders turn their backs and flee, which is going to prove to be quite disastrous. So we managed to quite handily deal with the Haladin Cav, and now that that support cavalry, along with the hammer of the Salamandrian Guard, is going to be able to deal some pretty serious damage here. Shore Riders of Mithrim being driven back with great loss over the plains. I think he's lost well over half of his remaining horsemen here. Many of them getting cut down as they try to flee. In hindsight, I probably should have been a little bit more aggressive and just really kept the pressure on and just pursued them basically to the ends of the earth. I know that they're running back towards their infantry support, but if I had been maybe a little bit more aggressive, a little bit quicker with some of my lighter cavalry, I might have been able to kill off more of them. That being said, we've kind of won the day here. It was very, very bloody for both sides. Cost me 2 of my pillagers and a lot of one of my units of salamanders, and probably almost half of another one. But I've still got at least a full unit of salamanders left, all told. Crotai nomads are now in behind. We managed to kill off some of the skirmishers here. Mevin was able to get his Bane of the Incomers back to the line. Friceware of Brethil taking up a very strong position up here on the hill. And I, unfortunately, will end up running into them. And my Crotai nomads will take a little bit of damage there. Over on the front lines, the Haladin have managed to cut their way through most of my center, but a little bit of help here in the form of the Marines of Eglarest is going to be very welcome indeed. More support there from the dismounted Mardrot, starting to take its toll, and my flank is slowly but surely beginning to crumble, but the Haladin, unfortunately, don't have the numbers to really follow that up with anything. Crotai Marauders here have managed to throw all of their ammunition, and now I'm sending them up here on the hill to sort of support with numbers against this Haladin push, Haladin Mithrim combined push, and Alexander has managed to sort of stabilize things here. Meanwhile, on the front lines, much of the Mithrim army has been cut down. Marksman of Balar here managing to make a serious breakthrough. Outlaws of Hithlam and other such things are in behind, as are the Scouts of Eglarest. Now they are clashing with the remnants of the Shore Riders, all that remains of them in any case. Bane of the Incomers over here, it looks like they took some pretty ugly losses, and probably from that cavalry, I would guess, managing to prey upon them. Second unit of the Bane of the Incomers here suffering a charge from the rear from Alexander's Scouts of Eglarest, and now they're going to get one final brutal charge here into the rear of the Haladin. Doesn't look like it's going to do as much as I kind of expected it to. Only a handful of models are going to fall there, but hey, every little bit helps for sure. And Alexander is tightening the noose for sure. It looks like some of these Scouts of Eglarest that were routing have now come back, and he's going to have a pretty decent cavalry force still remaining. Looks like the Wayne Riders have also taken a decent amount of damage. Catapult has gone down, not sure from what. Nice rear charge there into the dismounted Mardrot. It's going to cut down many of them very quickly. Oh, so painful. And now we've sort of retaken the initiative here on the front lines. My Wardens and my Halberdiers managing a partial surround on what remains of the Haladin. This is probably their biggest contingent of troops still remaining, and they are definitely losing combat. And I've still got a decent amount of reserves left over. I've got some chaff infantry. I've got the Fangs of the Faithless. They're always nice to have in your pocket. And a lot of my cavalry is still down here, and I realized that I need to get my cav up here. Try and be as aggressive with them as possible, try and keep their units busy. And when the Friceware of Brethil were pulled back, it kind of opened the gateway for me. So I've got my Salamanders in there, I've got my Crotai Nomads, everything that I have just pouring through, and I'm going to try and get as many cheeky charges off as I can. The Haladin Chariots, though, are going to be able to get a beautiful charge here into the side of my lower-end horses, and they actually are super deadly. Look at that. Look at the carnage they leave behind them. That being said, in close quarters, they are quite fragile themselves, but the damage that they cause there is going to be enough to actually shake a lot of my units. And I'm trying to get a nice little rear charge here if I can, or at the very least force these units to turn around, and I will manage to do that, which is nice, but they're going to break before they can really accomplish anything significant. That being said, the Salamander's still on the field, and they managed to get a nice little charge in support of the warband, and that swung things a little bit against the sword bearers, or whatever they are. Yeah, sword bearers. Bane of the Incomers trying to cut their way through my heavy cavalry. I'm going to start to pull them back here. A little bit dismayed by the amount of losses, and now the centers of Mithrim and other things like that are being brought forward to guard against any further incursions. My warband have managed to do very well here against the sword bearers, who are kind of in absolute disarray. Normally this is a fight that would go extremely well for the sword bearers, but not today. Not today. Centers of Mithrim here now being brought back by Mevin, probably towards the hill. I think they're really starting to struggle. My Crotai Marauders have been thrown in there. Darawartha have managed to push all the way uphill. Marines of Eglarest now up there to get ready to pick up the slack, and I've managed to push through with another unit of my warband using their shield wall and isolate these Haladin units from one another, and that's going to open a big old gap in the back. I'm going to be able to bring my Fangs of the Faithless and other units here forward. Crotoni Marauders, along with the Marines of Eglarest, managing to overrun what remains of the Haladin, and slowly the rest of these units here are being cut to pieces. And if you take a look, I have quite a contingent of heavy infantry still left, but they're not going to be able to do anything until we can deal with what remains of the Haladin Square-to-Brother and Berserkers. Not sure what my Fangs of the Faithless are doing here. I think there was a little bit more micro going on than maybe I was equipped to handle. Over here, a big push in support of the Haladin. I've got my Salamanders, Scouts of Eglarest, and we definitely still have the cavalry advantage. And at this late point in the game, that's basically everything that you need to win. Shore Riders here, clashing briefly with my Salamanders. A little bit of a drive-by there as they push out elsewhere. And a nice charge there into the Bane of the Incomers, super disruptive, and managing to kill off well over half. I think that's going to be Mevin's general right there. So the Mithrim Elves have definitely lost their general. Cheeky rear charge into the rear of what remains of these Suskarlar, who are currently engaged in combat with my Fangs of the Faithless. But again, just another drive-by. My Salamandrian Guard are going to continue on. This is the power of these cavalry units here. They're going to smash their way into the rear of those Fry Square, and it's going to hurt so bad that they're going to break and run almost immediately, and that's going to free up yet more troops for us to pour through the gap here. Salamandrian Guard out cruising around as the Waltschreider chariots try to stop their rampage. They will manage to take down a decent amount of them, especially with the fire from the Bane of the Incomers and things like that. But my Salamandrian Guard have bonuses against units like the Wayne Riders, and they're going to turn around and they're just going to deal them a death blow. And they will almost immediately rout off along with the rest of these units. And that's going to be all she wrote for them. Fangs of the Faithless here squaring off with some shaken and demoralized Sword Bearers of Mithrim. My Fangs of the Faithless are going to have no problems there. Still 32 Bane of the Incomers, though. Definitely something that I want to try and take care of. So now I'm cruising around here looking for some extra targets. Sword Bearers of Mithrim, I'm going to see it coming. And Mevin is going to turn them around, but it's going to be all for naught. Charge here from the Orion Ephidune, and I think we're going to see that extra charge value in action here. So you see many of those Bane of the Incomers getting impaled on the ends of those bodyguard spears, and that's going to be enough to break them off there. It's interesting. I like this change. I'm not sure why it took me so long to think of it, but it really does add a little bit of offensive utility that's quite contextual and requires a little bit of thinking and like analysis on the part of the Thalas player, but nonetheless does kind of respond to a need that they had, and I think that that's giving them some extra offensive power and doing it in a way that's very, very full and synergizes with a lot of their bonuses. So I'm quite happy with that. Orion Ephidune just murdered those axe units there. Very, very nice to see. Human Guildsmen turning around, but this is basically all but done at this point. 93 to 72. Like I said, it was not the closest battle, but I'm A, short on replays, and B, kind of enthusiastic to show off this match. I was really proud of the way that I was able to use my cavalry here to overcome some pretty big obstacles, and I really think it does show a lot of the philosophy that we have when it comes to Silmarillion, and that's even your low-tier units can be extremely powerful and extremely useful when used well, especially with combined arm tactics. That's a big focus of Silmarillion, is that we put a lot of emphasis on combined arms and knowing your unit types and finding smart ways to combine them in order to achieve your strategic and tactical goals. So it's kind of cool that I got to put that on display today. Hopefully it wasn't too disappointing for you guys. There we go. Sentries of Mithrim fighting hard. Darwarda down here. It's just look at that. Just so many dead Philothrim bodies. And it's just a sea of dead foes here. Both sides trotting in the mire of the other's blood. But I don't think the Haladin are going to be too long for this world. And so my Cav managed to get in there as well, doing a little bit of a drive-by, disrupting these units. Now the Marines are coming in from the rear, and I think these Darwarda are going to begin to rout very shortly. Indeed, there goes the General, so they're going to break almost immediately. Good night, sweet Prince. And the Sentries of Mithrim are going to be going here as well. So a decent amount of my Easterling units left, decent amount of the Philothrum left, but I think at the moment it's mostly my Easterling army. And I was largely able to prevail thanks to a lot of support from my allies. So very well played there to Alexander. Well played to the other side as well. The Cav engagements in the back went super in my favor, but I don't think a lot of people like will use the cavalry that way. Like the way that I've seen most people play is that you're not using your horse archers for close range support. You're trying to eat up ammunition, you're trying to look for weaknesses, probe, and that kind of thing. But we got very aggressive with them, and we supported them well with the sort of meat shields of the pillagers and then the killing and striking power of the salamanders. So pretty cool game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Alexander 10Q definitely getting the most kills in that game there, cutting through Mevin's mid-tier army. Mevin deployed the most. Tundra's Fox had the least amount of troops for sure, but nonetheless, the army that he did have was extremely potent. A lot of relentless, a lot of damage, and it would have been much more difficult to get through there without the support of my ally. Let's take a look and see what did what. Salamandering Guard getting 179 and 101. The Pillagers, they were meat shields. They didn't really do a whole lot, but one of them did get 26 kills, and that's 26 Welsh Rider Dragoon kills right there. That's half a unit, so definitely worth it in the long run. Protoni Nomads doing very well. A lot of kills there are going to be infantry, but it's going to be split, I think, about 50-50 between infantry and cavalry, so there's a lot of dead horsemen included in that count as well. My Halberdiers did super well, and that's basically it. My Clan Guard did okay. Warband did alright. The Wardens, they kind of did their job. They held everything together. They are the glue that keeps everything stuck. So, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that. My name is Jordan, also known as JMonster. If you guys enjoyed this, don't forget to leave a like down at the bottom. Commenting is fabulous. Helps me feed the beast that is the algorithm, get more people involved in the mod, and ultimately expand the community, and that allows me to bring you more larger and cooler games. So, please do like, subscribe. If you guys want to see more content, well, you know where to find me. I'll see you next time, everybody.